sponsored by JMR Rentals, professional digital cinema and broadcast rentals in Brooklyn, New York. To find out more, visit their website, jmrny.com. Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend, where we go behind the scenes and talk to the creators of independent entertainment. I'm Jason Godbey, and today we have a special show for you. As you know, we've partnered with Katra Film Series for their Alumni Spotlight interview series. And joining me via Zoom today, his documentary short, Notes from Liberia, first screened at Katra way back in the day when they were still at the Katra Lounge. His new film, Ainu Mosir, is currently streaming on Netflix. Mr. Takeshi Fukunaga. Welcome, Takeshi.
Hi, Jason. Thank you for having me.
Hey, it's great to have you. Konbanwa, or Ohio, I guess it would be over there?
Ohio is...
Because you guys are in the morning over there.
Yeah, 10 a.m. here.
You're actually in the future. You're like 14, 15 hours ahead. So right. It's already... how are things? Does it get better in the next 14 hours?
Not quite. it's the same.
All right. Well, thanks for the note of hope there, Takeshi. So I want to talk to you about the film, but first I want to talk to you about you. So how did you come to filmmaking? What is your origin story, so to speak?
So I was born and raised in Hokkaido, Japan, but then I moved to US when I was 20 to study abroad. And then first in Minnesota, and then I was there for 2 years, and then moved to New York. Went to Brooklyn College Film School and graduated from in 2007. I just kept making some short films, and then didn't give up on it, and then made my first feature, and then premiered it at the Berlin Film Festival in 2015, and that's when my career really started.
So you were making films here in the U.S. At first, and you've made films in Japan since.
So Ainu Mosir, which is my second feature, is the first film I ever made in Japan.
This is your second feature. What was your first feature?
My first feature was called Out of My Hand, and that was about a Liberian immigrant coming to New York and becomes a cab driver.
And that was a documentary film?
No, that was actually fiction.
That was a fictional film. But Notes from Liberia, which you produced, that was a documentary.
Yes. So the connection between those two projects was Notes from Liberia was the first project. And that inspired me to do a fiction film that became Out of My Hand.
Very cool. So with the new film, you went back to Japan to film this. How did it come about? What was the inspiration behind it?
It's a coming-of-age story about this boy who is indigenous to the land of Hokkaido, and then they're called Ainu. And then throughout the film, he tries to come to terms with his the loss of his father, and also his roots as indigenous Ainu. And then I'm not Ainu. I'm a Japanese person who's born and also born in Hokkaido. The reason why I came to this subject is that, first of all, I was really eager to learn about Ainu and their culture, which I didn't have a chance to growing up in Hokkaido. Historically, there are only a few narrative films about Ainu, and then every time it was made, it was Japanese actors, professional actors, playing Ainu roles, which is not acceptable in today's culture, representation standard. And so this movie is supposed to be the first movie about Ainu, starring Ainu people. And then I thought that was a meaningful thing to do.
How did you kind of find out about this culture? Had you seen films on it before, or how did it kind of come to you? Did you know somebody from there?
When I grew up, there wasn't a proper education about Ainu, but everybody knew, as a fact that they are there, as indigenous people, and but I wouldn't say the same, but they went through a similar situation as Native American or other indigenous people did the Japanese people, took over their land. They were, and then the Ainu people went through the, severe discrimination and forced assimilation. And today there's no native speaker of their own language. And so there's, and then so those things I knew a little bit about it on paper, but not, on the personal level. Like, but growing up, there are like, for example, like, classmates or some like Ainu person, but because of that kind of social pressure, none of them really spoke openly about their background. So to me, it was always kind of like taboo.
Did you find people from that culture? Did you start, like, did you have to do a lot of research in terms of interviewing people and so forth?
So after I decided to make this movie, the first thing I did, was to go to different towns and then meet as many Ainu people as possible, and then talk to them and then learn about them. And so, like I decided to make this one while I was finishing up my first feature, which is back in 2014. And so it took me about 5 years to finish this one, and then most of that first couple of years just was for me to do research both in book and also in person.
Seeing the trailer and stuff, it looks kind of documentary-esque, like it's got like a documentary style to it. Was that the initial intention, or did it kind of, was that the way it kind of worked out?
It was kind of in the back of my head, because working with non-actors, like non-actor Ainu people was part of the initial idea, to make this movie. So and then like bringing out their like natural selves, and then bringing out their like natural performances into the movie was key to make this project successful. So like, so documentary or more kind of free flow approach was in my mind, but I made that the decision with in collaboration with the DP before we started shooting.
So you were filming over there. You were filming in sort of Ainu country, and were there kind of challenges that came across with that? Were people accepting of you? Were people like, "Why is this Japanese kid trying to make a movie about our culture?" Tell me about like some of the challenges and so forth there.
First of all, there isn't any Ainu country per se. There's no like reservation like for Native Americans in US. Um, and but when I first went to the communities, there weren't like suspicious or doubtful. But they of course I needed some time to really for we needed they needed some time for them to really understand and then trust me. And but they never really challenged me, especially after I started talking about the motivation of why I want to make it and then how I want to make it. And and then to essentially to really make this film as hopefully as a proper cultural representation for them. And this isn't everything about Ainu, of course. It's just a step for a better understanding and recognition of them.
And your main character is a child actor.
Well, child actor, um he's a child, but he never acted in any movies before.
Wow, so that's kind of a double challenge that you've got there. You've got, working with, because they tell you, don't work with children, don't work with animals and things like that. But so you're working with a child actor who's a novice. Like, how do you direct somebody like that? Were you used to, because you had a documentary background, were you used to kind of dealing with non-actors? And like, how were you able to kind of get the performance from them?
It's a real challenge. I mean, my with my first feature, I some of the scenes were had a very much a documentary aspect. So I had some experience, but in in a way, this is more documentary than my first. And then the key to that was really to create an environment where they can be comfortable and then be natural. Of course, there's a camera and then there's a crew, and then we do takes. But because they are playing a version of themselves with people they know, with actual friends and families, they could be they as soon as they loosen up, they could be just be natural and then bring their natural selves into the film. But they never acted in any films before, but at the same time they've been like practicing dances and songs, and then they have some experiences as a performer, so that really helped as well.
And did you kind of do anything before? Like, did you kind of take people out to dinner, or did you like have lunch and stuff before to kind of get them more comfortable with you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like I've been to that the town probably 4, 5, or 5, 6 times, before we started shooting. So I mean, it wasn't just a one or a couple of dinners. I spent days there, with them, and then have some like a drunk night, with adults over there, and barbecue, and it's yes, of course. The first thing for the first thing you need to do is to create a relationship, and if you couldn't have that, they would never be a natural in front of camera and a bunch of other people.
Are you working with a small crew, a big crew? How many days are you guys shooting, or how long are you on location for that?
As far as creating a natural environment, for them to be, to bring on like a natural performances is there are a couple of things that I took, and one of them is that to keep the crew as minimum as possible. And then there are, for the writing camera and writing department, there are only 3 people, and then they're from New York. It was a mix of Japanese and American crew, and DP was Sean Price Williams, who shot Ari Safri's movies and Alex Ross Perry's movies, and then the shooting days was about a little over a month, and because then we shot in 3 seasons, from in summer, fall, and winter. If you see the movie, you can tell why we needed the time passage in that movie to tell the particular story. And then actually another thing I did was, so there was of course a script, but like I wrote each characters based on real people, and then there are dialogue, but I never asked them to memorize those lines. Instead, they were free. Of course, there are some like lines that needed to be said to construct the story, and but they were free to say, free as far as how to say it, and then also what to say before and after. So half of the movies were improvised.
So it's the kind of thing where you can say to people like, "Listen, as long as we don't leave it, as long as we don't leave any plot out, you can just kind of say it the way you need to say it. So make sure it's a more natural performance kind of thing."
Or more like I say, like let's say these few, we need to say these few words, and the scene is going to be about this, and then this is beginning, middle, and end. But you guys are free to say, whatever you say, around that.
Was there resistance to that, or were they kind of more open to that at first?
They're open to that. I mean, like, because that's how I avoided making mistake to like paint my preconceived notions on them, and like, so like, because that's the wrong thing to do, and then that's against the reason why I wanted to make this movie. And because they were free, because they weren't told to be to act like someone else, they were having fun, and then they were very happy that when after it was all finished.
Did you feel like with the improvisational nature, did that give you like, did you have to do more work in the editing room because of that?
We do the first take, and then there are like some lines that were really strong and I really liked, and then I asked them to repeat it up from the second take. So it wasn't like every time it was totally different from the take before, but as we do more takes, it becomes more consistent.
Cool. So you kind of developed a rhythm and a method to it, so that you're getting natural performances, but you're still kind of getting what you want. Are you doing like, is it like 15, 16, 20 takes?
No, it wasn't like that. That was actually surprising. Most of the takes were never over like 4 or 5. Well, sometimes few some like because of the technical difficulties and stuff. There are a few some takes have a lot more, but some shots have a lot more takes, but most of them are relatively low, I think.
So if you had to, you did, but it wasn't because of the performances.
Sometimes it was, but most of the time it wasn't. And then the thing is, again, there are amazing on camera, and then there are really great performers, but at the same time they are not professional either. So if you give in too many directions and then doing too many takes, work against um work against you, as far as trying to get natural performance.
When they saw the film, and I assume that they've seen the film at this point. What did they think of it?
They were really overwhelmed. I mean, like when they first saw it, because until I had a final green light from them, I wouldn't say it's finished. So as soon as we finished editing, I first went back to the town and then had a DIY screening, test screening for them. And at first it was almost like a too close to them, because they were seeing themselves in a in a movie with the people they know in the place they live. So at first they were like, who's gonna watch this? Like it's gonna be like really, it's really gonna go out as a movie, and then they couldn't really kind of see it as a movie. But thankfully, we went to festivals, and then now on Netflix in English territories, and also playing in theaters in Japan. So when they finally saw it in a theater space with a general audience, they were really moved and then touched by it.
When you saw it with, because you saw it with them, and of course you probably saw it 100 times when you were editing it, right? So when you first saw it with an audience, what was that reaction like, and how did that kind of feel?
Like general Japanese audience, it's been the reaction has been really, really positive. And then I often see or hear that they just learn so much about Ainu, and then about their culture, and then the state they are in the present day. Because again, even today, people know about the word Ainu, and then kind of what they are, but don't really know much, other than that. So that the film really portrays Ainu people living in today's society, and then it touches on some historical fact, and then some like a stereotype that still happens. Some people still have, and so it's other than they are liking it as a movie, they also like it as a tool, to learn more about Ainu.
Yeah, it's like you're creating a cultural experience, and it's kind of even. I think it's different because it's not a documentary. You're telling a story. Do they get the story as well, and are they moved by the story itself?
Yeah. They and like I think the reason why it's it's getting seen by so many people is because essentially it's a coming of age story, and it's something that anybody can relate to. Of course Ainu is a big part of it, but first and foremost, it's a story about the boy who is just trying to find his way through. And then again, for the reaction from Ainu people, I think one of the main reasons why it's been pretty positive is that again, they've never seen themselves in a film like this. Like every time there was a movie about Ainu, it was always a sad story played by Japanese actors, and then so they don't really just feel a connection to the representation on the on media. But this time, even though I'm not Ainu, it's made with a close collaboration with them. So that experience seems like something that they never had before.
Do you think that you'll start a trend and that we'll get more movies about this community now?
The attention toward Ainu as a whole is growing for the last couple of years. For example, there is the first National Museum of Ainu opened this year, and there was a popular novel about Ainu, and so there, like I think I'm sure there are some like other projects that are being developed, but I just hope that Ainu community is a part of the creative process, because otherwise they will repeat history.
Do you think that now that you've been in there, you've kind of been in their world, and you've made this movie with them? Do you think that some kid from that community is going to pick up a camera and want to make a film about himself or a film about his people?
I hope so. I mean, and then I'm sure it will happen sometime in the future. Right now, there is no Ainu filmmaker as far as people know. Um, but I'm sure that will happen. And then if when it happens, and then if I'm there, if there's something I could help, I'll be happy to. Like of course, I still believe that like perspective from outside, looking in, is still valuable, and it has its own advantage. But at the same time, the first person view should also be celebrated, especially from underrepresented community. So I'm all for it. Again, like I hope I get to see it, even as just a film fan.
Do you have anything coming up next? Do you have another project on the horizon?
Yes. I I've lived in US for 16 years, and then I moved to Tokyo last year. And then one of the reasons for that was to develop another project that takes place here, and that's going really well so far. And it's it takes place in northern part of the main island Japan called Tohoku, and it's a period piece. Takes place in the late 18th century, and based on the old folk tales in that region. And in short, it's about the girl who tries to find her place, which is not in her own village, but and she escapes to the mountains and then meets with this kind of mystical monster, and then starts a new life there, and then it becomes a whole like witch hunt story.
If people want to find out more about you, like if producers want to hire you or they want to know more about your films, or find Ainu Mosir online, where can they find you?
For me, I have my own website, takeshifukunaga.com. For Ainu Mosir, for English information, I guess you can go to Array distributors website, or like YouTube channel, or their outlet, and then there are a number of like articles and interviews.
And the film itself is currently streaming on Netflix, correct?
Yes.
Fantastic. Congratulations, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on, and we're doing time travel across the world here. But thanks so much, and we'll be sure to have you back for the next project.
I'll be happy to.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all we got for you today. Thanks so much for taking this trip down the rabbit hole. I'd like to thank my guests, Takeshi Fukunaga, as well as Joffrey Guerrero and the good folks over at Katra Film Series. For more information on them, visit katrafilmseries.com or follow them online at Katra Film Series. For more of our content, visit NoRestForTheWeekendPodcast.com, and don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. For Behind the Rabbit Productions, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.